What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Axia. I'm a cinematographer, filmmaker, photographer based in Los Angeles, California. In today's video, we're taking a look on how to light a scene at night. In particular, we're gonna take a look on how I did replicate the moonlight look in my latest short film, The Unplanned Parenthood. The moonlight look is very much used in many horror movies or thriller movies, anytime that maybe the characters are in a spooky, dark situation and they don't have access to any sort of lighting, that is artificial. Now, we all know that at night it's impossible pretty much to see if you don't have any sort of lighting. But in movies, in order to support the story and in order for the people to understand what the hell is going on in the movie, well, the cinematographers tend to recreate that moonlight look that I was talking to you about, which is pretty much, a subtle blue light, very soft, that comes eventually from the sky or from the window if the scene takes place inside. And like I was saying before, this is a very popular look. It's something that I've never tried before this short film. Apparently it worked pretty well, you guys liked it, and therefore, with the help of some BTS material and some lighting diagram that I made for this video, we're gonna be able to take a look on how I did it so that eventually you can, learn something from it and eventually apply it to your next short film or music video or whatever you wanna do with it. As far as gear, I shot the scene with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera with the Sigma 18-35 1.8 as my lens, and we used only 4 lights to replicate this moonlight look: an aperture 300D, an aperture 120D, and 2 Quasar Science tubes. But before we go ahead and dive into the breakdown, I want to show you the full scene that we're breaking down today so that even the people that didn't get to see my latest short film can understand what we're talking about. Let's roll it. Alright guys, here we are in Premiere Pro. Before we go ahead with the breakdown, I just want to point out very quickly what were my camera settings for this scene. So I want to start by saying that my internal white balance setting in the camera was about 4000 Kelvin, which gives me already a cooler look than the classic 5600. I also want to point out that all the fixtures that I use for this scene, both the aperture and the Quasar Science tubes, are daylight balance fixtures. Therefore, in order to obtain a more convincing blue look, that usually the typical moonlight has, I put on each fixture a full CTB gel. I also want to point out that I shot this entire scene at ISO 400. Keeping low ISO, it's always very good whenever you're shooting something in low light, because you want to avoid having any sort of noise so that your image, even though it's shot at night, has a very clean look. But with that said, let's keep going with this breakdown. Here we have Delphine, our main actress. And now we're gonna take a look at the lighting breakdown for this scene. So as I was saying, we revealed Delphine in a top-down shot, which is pretty much used in movies, you know, to reveal any sort of character that it's usually asleep. You know, she's wearing her pajamas, she has her teddy bear next to her. You know, we're just trying to give a little bit sauce to the character. But let's take a look at the lighting diagram that I made for this scene so that you guys can understand how I lit this specific shot. I'm gonna put it here to the side. So as I was telling you guys, in order to shoot for this moonlight look, you wanna keep your subject close to a window. And as you guys can see in this diagram, I draw here the bed where she's laying. This is where the camera is, pretty much on top of her. And we see that, you know, behind her, there's two windows, where outside in the yard of my house, I placed the two lights, the 300D with the CTB gel and the 120D that does that flickering lightning effect. Also, as you guys can see, I draw here the rain because while we were shooting, we were spraying water on the windows in order to give that water texture in the light that was filtering through the windows. But let me show you another photo here that I have so that you guys can understand a little bit better. So this is an actual BTS shot that we took while we were filming this specific scene. And as you guys can see, we have Delphine on the bed, the camera top down, rigged on a C-stand, and here we have that window that I was talking to you guys about, that it's pretty much filtering the light from the outside. Another light that I want to point out pretty much is this Quasar Science that you see here and that you also see in my lighting diagram. So this light here is just supposed to bring to this side of the frame here a little bit more exposure, because the 300D that was shooting through the window would create a very, very harsh split face on Delphine. So I could see this side of her face very well lit, but the dark side was a little bit too dark and was losing a little bit of too much information. So therefore, I placed another Quasar Science tube, of course, with the CTB gel on top. I shot it on the ceiling so that, you know, I could feel a little bit more this side of the scene. Now, another thing that I want to show you is how we place the lights outside. So here we have the two lights, the 300D with the CTB gel and the 120D without a gel. The reason why the 120D with the lightning effects doesn't have a gel is because usually the lightning doesn't really have a blue color, it's more of a white color. We tried to place the lights very up high because usually, you know, the moonlight comes from the sky, and so your light source should be high in the sky so that, you know, it kind of emulate a little bit that direction. And also, as you can see, the lights are pretty far from the window and they don't have any sort of diffusion. The reason why they don't have any sort of diffusion and then they are far from the windows is because I really wanted the texture of the window, the shadows created from the window, to cast in a very harsh way on the scene so that we could get that rain effect very clear on her face. Now, I also want to show you how we did the rain effect. So in order to recreate the rain effect, we pretty much just had Logan. Logan is Delphine's little brother, and Logan was staying outside shooting water from the garden hose on the window that was lighting the scene, and that's pretty much how we pulled off, you know, the rain effects. Now I want to show you a little variation of this lighting setup, because by changing the camera angle, I also changed a little bit the lighting. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's the second lighting breakdown that we're gonna do in this scene. So now the actress is standing up. The camera is no more on top of her, it's on the side of her. And here we still have our key light and our strobe light outside, and we still have the rain watering the windows. And now you can see how also this texture of the window is on this wall, which is very cool. Again, no diffusion so that we can see the texture of the window very clearly, and we can see the drops of the rain on the reflection. I also moved the quasar that was here in front of her, you know, so it's pretty much right here, lighting her face so that we can see a little bit better her expression. And I also added another quasar on this side of the room where the camera is, because I was losing a lot of detail. You know, this part of their face was very dark, so I give it a little bit of light, you know, on the ceiling so that it would bounce down and create a little bit of exposure. But now with the help of some BTS material, let me show you what I mean. So this is the secondary lighting setup that I'm talking to you about. So as you guys can see, we have, you know, her standing up. We got the light coming from outside that reflects on this wall. We got this quasar right here that it's lighting her face, but we also added an extra quasar on this side that bounces on the ceiling and falls on their face right here, so that we get a little bit more details on the darker side of Delphine's figure. Now, I know that it is supposed to be a night scene, but I try to never have part of the image that are very clipped and very dark. I just like in general that although this is a night scene, it's pretty visible and we can understand what's going on. But now that we've broken down this very first look, let's move over in the film so that we can break down another lighting setup. So Delphine is scared, she gets out of bed, and she walks out of her bedroom and walks into the living room. She is very scared. She wanders around.
Daddy?
As she calls for her dad. Now, let's take a look at this lighting setup and let's break it down. Let me pull up the lighting diagram that I made for this scene. So here we are. I'm gonna put it right here. So as you guys can see in the diagram, Delphine makes her way from her bedroom into the living room. Now here in the living room, right in front of her, there's of course the camera that's filming her, and behind her, there's the two windows that are sprayed with rain, as you can see behind her. Now outside in the backyard, I placed my 300D with a CDB gel, and this 300D pretty much serves the purpose of just shooting this ambient blue light inside the room. But also, if you take a look in the beginning of this section when she's about to enter the living room, you know, because the windows that the 300D is shooting through has water in it, you know, it gives this nice rain texture on the surfaces inside. And this is very believable, you know, it really sells the effect of the thunderstorm and the rain. As Delphine also keeps walking, you know, at some point she gets more illuminated by the 300D right here. You can see how her face gets a little bit more illuminated on this side. But as we keep going, you know, and as she makes her way further a little bit down the living room, well, the 300D, because it's placed outside, can't light her face anymore. So I definitely needed to add another light to illuminate Delphine once the 300D was behind her. And let me show you what I mean again with the diagram. So as you guys can see here, left of the frame where the light source is coming, I placed a 120D with a CDB gel shooting in the corner of the room. Now you guys can't see the edge of the room, of course, but supposedly, we don't know, there might be a window on this side of the room, right? If we can't see the window on this side of the room, well, we can imagine, or we can let the audience imagine that there's a window on this side. So I placed a 120D with a CDB gel here. The light bounces on the wall and hits Delphine in the face right about here. But in order to shape the light in a very pleasant way, I had to place a flag right behind the 120D. Because here's what it is. The 120D shoots the light through the corner of the wall, the light bounces and hits Delphine. But with this black flag, we allow the bounce to go only towards Delphine and not towards the wall. Because you see the light, whenever you bounce light, the light starts spilling everywhere. But with this black flag placed behind the light, we allow the spillage of the light only towards Delphine and not towards the walls in the back. I also added a Quasar Science 2 because, you know, all this bouncing of light was killing a little bit the output. And because I wanted to stay at ISO 400, I just added a Quasar Science 2 with CDB just to, you know, reinforce the direction of the light towards Delphine. Well, now that we're done breaking down the second look, let's move to the third one. Delphine makes her way through the living room and arrives towards the kitchen. Here she hears a sinister noise and she takes a moment. So now let me pull up the lighting diagram for the scene, which is actually my favorite because this is a very stylistic shot. I really like how it came out. So here we have the camera, all right, that it's already inside the kitchen. Delphine is right in front of it. And, you know, behind the camera, there are two big windows that you guys can see. But what you guys can actually see is the texture of the rain hitting, you know, the windows that are being illuminated from the 300D that it's outside. So the 300D, again, from outside behind the camera, shoots inside the room, provides the general ambience to the scene, but also because it's filtered through the water, it creates this very interesting shadows on the fridge and this very interesting shadows on the oven. But again, as I mentioned before, the 300D provides a general illumination to the kitchen. But what's illuminating Delphine is again the 120D, okay, that's bouncing again in the corner of a wall that it's right here that you guys can see. And you know, it bounces on the wall and hits Delphine. The reason why it hits Delphine and it doesn't hit the back, which is very nicely dimmed, and Delphine stands out from the background, is because behind the light, again, I placed a flag. You see, a lot of this lighting is just about bouncing the light towards the main character and blocking, you know, the spillage of the light with flags so that, you know, we get a natural, nice bounce, but we're not over illuminating too much. And also here, as you guys can see, we have another Quasar tube that it's placed 45 degrees behind her just to give her a little bit of separation and just to give her a little bit of light in her hair. Now, I have some BTS material of this scene, so let me show you what I mean. This is that Quasar Science tube that I was telling you guys that it's illuminating her hair. And as we go forward, here's the 120D that's bouncing on the wall that it's in front of it, which is supposedly to be here. And behind the light right here, as you guys can see, there is a flag. I don't know if you guys can see it here. There's this black flag right here. So the light pretty much, it's contained and doesn't hit the back wall and hits Delphine that it's right here by the door. And there is me, of course, you know, filming. And as you guys can see, from outside, we have that 300D that provides the general, you know, illumination for this room. But now that we've broken down the lighting setup for this, let's move over in the short film, because we're gonna get to see how the 300D, from becoming just a light that fills the room, becomes the key light in the next shot. Here again, the lighting is the same as before, but as our character makes her way inside the kitchen, and as she walks more inside, she gets closer to the windows. And as she gets closer to the windows, the 300D that before was just filling the room, now it's becoming the key light to illuminate her right side of her face. Now we're pretty much done with this breakdown, because, you know, that's it for the moonlight scenes in the short films. But as we keep going in the movie, I want to throw in there a little bonus and show you how I managed the transition with, you know, the moonlight look into a more indoor home artificial type of lighting. So Delphine makes her way through the kitchen and finally finds her dad, as we can see now. But as you guys notice, as she approaches, the color temperature on her skin becomes warmer, because she's coming closer to a 3200 Kelvin light source, which is this one. Now, as you guys can see, this lamp here is pretty much motivating her face right here. Now, a little trick on how I pulled off this lighting is that, of course, this lamp wasn't bright enough to illuminate her face to this degree. So, as you guys can see, in the actual raw footage, I actually had a Quasar placed right here. And then what I did, I took a clean shot without the light, and I masked it in the middle, and I removed the light. And this is something that you guys can do in all your short films. Whenever you're shooting on a tripod, you can make light sources disappear. So as you guys know, now she's seeing this figure that we yet don't know that it's her dad. And this lighting setup now, Dad? It's very easy. I just have a Quasar Science tube that illuminates her face very softly, and then in the back we still have the moonlight. Now, the reason why I really wanted to do this lighting here by the door is because I think that the blue and the yellow actually works beautifully. You know, they're complementary colors, and you know, there's a lot of color contrast in this scene. Before we completely wrap this lighting breakdown, I just want to show you something very interesting. I want to show you how bright the uncolored version of this piece is. As you guys can see, if I trigger the uncolored version of this short film, you'll notice how bright the shots were taken. You see, this for a night scene to me feels very, very bright. But I just want to show you how, you know, after color grading, you can make your images darker. But shooting very bright is anyway going to help you, you know, whenever you are dealing with this, you know, darker look, to keep your shadows very nice and clean. So don't be afraid of giving it a little bit more light. And then, you know, you can always darken a little bit the image in post. But it's very hard to do the opposite, to shoot very dark and make it brighter in post. That will cause a lot of noise into your image. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you find this video helpful, and if there's any other scene that you want me to break down from my previous short film, The Unplanned Parenthood, let me know in the comments. If I see that there's, you know, a general demand on a specific scene, well, I'll be happy to break it down for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.